Alright YouTube, so we are back of course to talk about some Final Fantasy IX Remake. Yes, in case you've been living under a rock for the past week or more, NVIDIA GeForce Now had a massive leak, a little over a week ago I think at this point, that had like 18,000 games on it, and they themselves have confirmed the list is real, but that a lot of the games on it are speculative. One of them, of course, being Final Fantasy IX Remake. Now, me personally, I don't see why they would speculate a Final Fantasy IX Remake. Like, if they're just pulling that out of their ass, why don't they have, like, a Final Fantasy VIII Remake on there, and a 6, and a 5, and a 4, like, all of them. So every Final Fantasy game, essentially. I'm also not entirely sure how they would know of a 9 Remake before it's been officially revealed, unless, like, you know, Square Enix or devs in general give places heads up, because we've seen games that pop up on random websites that end up being true, like obviously the Walmart Canada leak, some of those games were legit. We had the recent like Alan Wake Remaster popping up on a random like Japanese or Taiwanese website. Obviously that recently got revealed as well, so they have some sort of prior information from somewhere. And maybe at times some of these websites are just pulling it out of their ass and getting lucky because these games are actually in the works and soon to be releasing. But I find it hard to believe that NVIDIA GeForce Now, it would just randomly speculate this game. Like, if we had some sort of, like, whispers or rumors of this thing existing, like people saying, you know, oh, I heard from a friend of a friend who works for Square Enix that they're working on a 9 Remake, then there's something here, right? There's like, okay, they can put that up on their website, they speculate maybe it's going to come one day. But again, I've not heard anything ever about this until this leak, which makes me think that there might be something a little bit legitimate to it. And with the upcoming Final Fantasy IX animated show that is dropping next year, 2022, I think it makes a lot of sense for them to re-release 9. Now, whether or not that is just a new remaster of the game or a remake, an actual remake of Final Fantasy IX, I think it makes a lot of sense to kind of garner hype for that TV show. Now, obviously, you can buy Final Fantasy IX, the original, or at least the HD port, rather, on pretty much any platform out there, from your mobile phone to whatever you game on. But I can't imagine that game is like doing crazy numbers right now in terms of sales. I'm sure it does decent or good for as old as the game is, but if you drop another remaster or, again, a remake of the game, that's probably going to do pretty damn well. Make them a lot of money. So the point of this video is I want to kind of discuss this, the possibility of this game, my thoughts on that, and what I want from a Final Fantasy IX Remake. First and foremost, it's very dependent, as we've mentioned a few times in this video already, on what it is. Is it another like HD remaster of the game, just a better looking version of the game, or is it a ground up remake, something like, you know, Spyro Reignited, Crash Insane Trilogy, or maybe like the Link's Awakening game that came out a couple years back, like the just graphics overhauls, like they rebuild the game from the ground up in a new engine, but it's still the same game you remember from when you were a kid. Or is it a Final Fantasy IX remake in the vein of Final Fantasy VII Remake? And the question is very important because I can give different answers based on each one. Like, if it's just another visual overhaul to some degree, just slightly better than the version we have on all platforms currently, I don't need it. Don't care. Played enough Final Fantasy IX in my time that I'm not willing to pay for another one that just looks a little bit better than what I currently have. If it's a Final Fantasy IX remake similar to what they're doing with 7 Remake, I'm also, as cool as that would be, like conceptually in my mind, I'm also not that interested in that because they would also not be able to put that game out in one release, right? It'd have to be similar to 7 Remake. If they're going to expand it the way they did 7, it'd have to come out in multiple games. And I just personally don't want to wait years and years until the entire Final Fantasy IX Remake project is complete. And of course there are benefits to that if they were to go that route, similar to 7 Remake, where they can expand, like, you know, backstories and side characters and side quests and lore and world exploration, stuff like that. Like, there's benefits to it. But I just personally don't want to wait a decade or some shit until I can finally play all of 9 Remake or some stupid shit. So me personally, what I want from a Final Fantasy IX Remake is the last option. Similar to the Insane Trilogy, the Reignited Trilogy, Link's Awakening on Switch. Just a ground-up graphics overall. Built up in Unreal Engine 4 or 5 or however the fuck they want to do it. That's what I personally want. If they're going to make a 9 Remake, that's what I want. And it's kind of contradictory to what I said earlier where I don't want a game that just looks better, but this would be completely different because it would look drastically different to the version that we have now. I pretty much just want like the same game, just insanely better looking. Now, if they want to add new content, I'm not against that as long as it's not like 7 Remake to where they're adding like new story elements that didn't exist before or drastically potentially changing the story. But if you want to take, like, I don't know, like a cave somewhere or a couple different areas around the map, or maybe certain cities have like another area or two to explore, I'd be fine with that, dude. That's cool as hell. And side quests that didn't exist in the original game, I'm fine with that too. Just don't take away from the original. You could also add in new weapons and armor, which is something that Final Fantasy XII Zodiac Age did. It was obviously a visual upgrade from the PlayStation 2 version, but it also incorporated the job system that the international version of the game had. But it also added in, like, new ultimate weapons. Like, just about every weapon category in the original game had, like, a new ultimate weapon. In Zodiac Age, the weapon did not exist in the original PS2 release, which I think that's fucking cool stuff. Like, you have something new to grind for. You're playing the same game again. It looks better, but there's also new goals and new weapons and things to find. They could also add in a new super boss. Don't get me wrong, Ozma is iconic for what he is. I still want my boy to be in the game, but the game's 20-something years old at this point. There's infinite guides out there on how to beat him, so it'd be kind of nice to have like a new super boss to work towards and beat, especially if you have new weapons and armor to obtain. So when it comes to Final Fantasy IX Remake, assuming that it is real, what I want is pretty much just an engine upgrade, if that makes any sense. Just, it's made in Unreal Engine, I'm assuming 4, potentially 5, but it's still the exact same game that we can play right now. Now, if they want to balance some things, make certain attacks and things and counter rates, whatever, higher, lower, whatever they want to do, and they want to add some new content, I'm perfectly fine with that as long as the base game is still intact. If it's still the exact same Final Fantasy IX that I've been playing since I was a kid, but with some additional content, perfectly fine with it. But of course, those are my thoughts, my dudes, so I want to pass off to you guys. So with the assumption, with the discussion, the speculation that we're going to say Final Fantasy IX Remake is real and is coming out sometime in the future, what is it that you want from it? What do you think it's going to be? Either my dudes, that is the video. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you guys aren't anyone to more Final Fantasy IX Remake content, assuming there is more content to make about this potential game sometime within the future. Turn on notifications. Follow me on Twitter, dashingdavidYT. I'm a Discord. Links to my works are in the description. And in the outro. Later, guys.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Low Gain or leave it like Cobain.